All right, class. First off, as always, good day. I'm glad you're here. So, today we are going to be going over the beginning of the end of Rome. Okay, we've talked about last video, we talked about the great times, the rise of Rome, how they started off and grew so big. Now we're getting to the part where things are starting to go down and the separation of classes and things like that. So let's go ahead and get started with your warm-up picture. All right, so here's your warm-up picture. Um, the first question it asks you is, in your own words, what's going on here? All right, so look at the background, look at the foreground. Um, I know some students in class said it's kind of hard to see, but that thin part, that's his head. You can see his ears. He got kind of big ears at the bottom. The first question asks you basically, oh, what's going on? So look at the person, look what they're doing, and yes, that is a cell phone in their hands. The second question asks you, based off the picture, do you think that this person takes any responsibility for what's happening? Yes, no, why you say that? Okay, whatever you feel it is. Okay, so go ahead, write your response, pause the video, but we're moving on to the notes in three, two, one. All right, let me move this video little thing here. Okay, so this is the part I forgot to put in the last video. Sorry, put in this one. Rome had a lot of special social programs and they had a lot of construction projects done during the golden age when they were rising and becoming big. Their bridges were magnificent. Now, most buildings nowadays we have steel frames, things like that, as support, to withstand the weight. They didn't have that back then. You know, those bridges you see was all stone and those bridges could take a lot of weight. The key thing to those bridges is if you look at the curvature, the very center, that's known as a keystone, right? That stone is known as a keystone. That was the most important piece because if that was broken or chipped or cracked in any which way, the whole bridge could collapse. Okay, so that keystone is the key thing. That's why it's called the keystone. Theaters, aqueducts. Remember, they didn't have pumps, they didn't have electricity. So to get water from one part of Rome to the other, they basically had to use gravity and use creativity on how to get water from here to there, you know, using nothing, no electricity, no pumps, things like that. Um, the temples, arcs, theaters, that's all they built. Okay. Now, one of the emperors, Trajan, was one of the good ones. He had a special program in which they helped out poor families who were in need, and also they helped educate the kids. Now, why is that significant? Because you have to remember, children are the future of the country, whatever country it may be. So if they neglect the kids, they're basically neglecting their future. Okay? By 200 AD, Rome had is about 3.5 million square miles. That's pretty big, and they traded with everyone, all to way even to China. Okay, which is quite a distance. They met with them, they traded with them, things like that. So that just shows you the span of the Roman Empire. All right, now in Rome, slavery was huge. Just like the Aztecs, the Romans didn't want to kill the people they fought. A lot of times when they conquered an area, they try to capture the people as much as possible because they would have them as slaves. Now, which slaves were the most sought after? The Greek slaves, specifically the Athenians. Because remember, the Athens, they taught their people how to read, how to write. They taught them poetry, literature, art, things like that. The Spartans, all they focused on was war. They never focused on intellectual growth. It was always about war and fighting and things like that. So those Athenian slaves were used as tutors, musicians, doctors, artists, shop assistants. They kept inventory, things like that. Craft people, they made things with their hands. You know, those people, things with skill, those were for the Greeks. Everyone else, the Spartans, Carthaginians, the German, they were used as cooks, valets, waiters, cleaners, gardeners, working in the fields. That's what they had them for. Back-breaking work that required little to no thinking. You know, but the Athenians, the Greeks, they were used for their skills. Now, one Roman writer said basically, when it comes to the slaves that don't require much thinking, those slaves you could work to the bone and let them die, and it'll be cheaper just to buy a new one than to take care of one. You know, again, that's for the back-breaking workers who are slaves, not the Greek. Okay, because again, tutors, musicians, doctors, all that stuff takes time to learn those skills. Whereas being a waiter, it doesn't take any skill whatsoever. To be a gardener it doesn't really take much skill. So those people, it's cheaper just to let them die, work them to the bone and let them die, than it was to take care of them. Now, there was a slave uprising led by this guy right here, the statue. His name was Spartacus. Okay, now you have to remember, gladiators fought for their lives in these arenas and things like that. So they fought several Roman armies and they won. Now, yeah, they got their freedom, cool. But the thing is, remember, Rome is so huge that they didn't really get far. And even Spartacus himself hid in a cave, and after a couple months, he was captured. Um, he was he, along with 6,000 other people, were crucified. They were nailed to a board, left outside. Birds would come and start like picking at their eyes, picking at their skin, their arms, legs, stuff like that. Um, Snakes, ants, insects would crawl up the boards and start biting them, eating them. They'd be out in the sun all day, no water. It was a horrible way to die. So here's your first question. Of the Greek jobs that were available to the slaves, tutors, musician, doctor, artist, shop assistant, craft people, which one do you say you would rather have and why? Now remember, when you're a tutor, you don't get to decide what you want to teach. Same thing with a musician. You don't get to choose what kind of music you play, or doctors, who your patients are. Same thing with artists. You don't get to choose what you're painting or creating. You're told what to do. But still, with that being in mind, which job do you feel you would rather have and why? Okay, so the writing prompts on the bottom there. So use that if you don't know how to start off the sentence. Okay, but we're moving on in three, two, one. All right. So at the end of the Pax Romana, which is again the peaceful era, the separation between the rich and the poor was huge. Okay. The rich were living in a nice places called villas, nice homes, spacious areas, whereas the poor were living in places called insules. That's the name of their apartment places they were living in. These places were tiny, crammed, together. They weren't really built really well because again, usually, typically, housing for the poor is not made to last forever and stuff like that. The floors were made of wood. Okay, this is key factor. And sometimes those floors would catch on fire. Because you have to remember, these people need warmth in their place. So a lot of times they had stoves, they had candles, they had lamps. And sometimes, hey, stuff happens. Somebody's being clumsy, they knock over the candle, knock over the lamp. And then the ground, which again is made of wood. If you've never seen dry wood catch on fire, it goes pretty quick. Okay, because since there's no moisture to slow down the fire, it just goes pretty quick. And they were very hard to put out. So imagine all these floors catching on fire, spreading from one building, so one apartment place to another, to the other, to the other, um, and just collapsing. That's what happened. And the most famous fire happened during Nero's time. Okay, legend has it that he played the fiddle while Rome burned. Okay, here's the thing: that instrument you see in his hand, the fiddle, that wasn't invented when he was emperor. We know now that that story is false. Did the fire happen during his time? Yes. Was he just laying around playing a song, this and that? No. Okay, no. He was not playing any instrument while Rome burned. Okay, but the story still lives on, which is now your next question. Okay, again, we know now Nero didn't play the fiddle while Rome burned. But why do you think the average person still believes in that story? Why do you think they still hold on to that story knowing, hey, the fiddle wasn't around back when Nero was Caesar? So think of like this: how things are now between the upper class, the powerful, the rich, and poor people. So maybe that might help you to answer this question. Think how things are now, and think about how things were back then between the rich, the powerful, and the poor people. Okay, and then that should help you on why the average person still believes in this story. Okay, so write your response, pause the video, because we're moving on in 3, 2, 1. So now Christianity, it's now starting to evolve. Um, the movement started in uh, Jerusalem, and then it went to Judea and Galilee. Okay, it started off within Judaism. Yes, the Old Testament, that is the old Bible. That's the Jewish Bible. The New Testament, that's the Christian Bible. Okay, but again, it started off in Jerusalem, spread to Judea, and then Galilee. Now, Simon Peter was supposed to spread the word and things like that. A lot of Roman citizens were looking at Simon Peter going, "Who are you? You're a fisherman. You have like no education. You're not even a Roman citizen, so why should anyone listen to you?" Well, there was another apostle named Paul, right? He's like, "Well, hi, I'm basically like a doctor, and I'm a Roman citizen. So if you won't listen to him, you should listen to me." And what he did was he spread the message of Christianity to the Gentiles. Now you might have heard that word in movies and TV shows, stuff like that. And you may have wondered, what's a Gentile? A Gentile is anyone who is not Jewish. That's what it means. Okay. So Paul's spreading the scripture. He's basically saying that, oh, Jesus was the Messiah. Um, he's here to save humanity. He died for your sins. And if you basically follow him, you accept his teachings and follow it exactly, your soul will be cleansed of sin and you will spend the rest of your life in eternity in paradise. Now, to the poor people, that sounds like a good deal. To the average Roman citizen, the reason I say that is because you have to remember the Roman citizens are brought up with learning about the gods: Zeus, Athena, Poseidon, Hades, Hercules. Achilles, things like that. These gods who were in these battles and some of that from before and stuff like, all that stuff. They were brought up with that religion, right? There's a God for this, there's a God for that, there's a God for this. Christianity is saying, no, 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 there's not a bunch of gods, there's one God. And that's kind of messing with their minds. And not only that, but the Christians will not bow to the emperor. They won't kneel down and stuff like that because to them, they're like the only person we should humble ourselves before is God. And they're like, and the emperor is just a man. That really rubbed them the wrong way too. So this was seen as act of treason, and in most countries around the world, the punishment for treason is death. So during Nero's time, Christians were persecuted, um, and some were, fed to the lions in the Colosseum. Some were crucified, even some were crucified upside down, as you see in that picture. But Nero, because of those great fires, he even blamed the Christians for that. He's like, they're the ones who spread that fire. They're the ones who started it. They're trying to blame me. They're trying to say, that it was my fault in some way. No, no, no. It was the Christians. It's the Christians. He knows it's not the Christians. Everybody and their mama knows that these apartments catch on fire all the time. People know it's not the Christians, but because of their anger of them, the idea starts to spread. And by 200 AD, the persecution of Christians start to diminish. It starts to go down a little bit. You're going to see why. Okay. Now, here's your next question. If you heard a rumor that is false, it's not true in any which way, but it's about someone you hate, would you spread it? Why not? Okay. Just like Nero, he knew the Christians did not start the fire, but yet he's blaming them. Why? Because he doesn't like them. So he's helping spread that rumor. Would you do the same? Now, again, I know it's easy to say, no, I would never do that. I would never do that. Okay, uh, if it's true, then okay. But if you're saying that just to say it, make yourself sound like you're innocent, some of that, you're only lying to yourself, and that's the worst thing you could ever do is lie to yourself. So don't lie. Put your response down. Be honest. And like I told the classes, no one reads your guys' stuff. It's only me, And for those of you guys who have been in class, when I tell stories about real life stuff, I never use people's names. You know, uh, I have never done that in my 14 years. I'm not gonna start now. Okay, so uh, who knows? Maybe 5 years from now, I might be like, you know what? I had this one class and I gave this question, and like half of them said, yeah, I would. Half of them said they wouldn't. Maybe something like that. But I never use your guys' names. All right, so be honest, be truthful. Okay, write your response. Okay, pause the video because we're moving on in three, two, one. All right, so now Christianity is starting to really appeal to all social classes, but really mainly to the poor and the powerless. Because again, you have to remember these poor people, all they really have to call their own is their soul. That's about it. And the Christians are saying, if you follow this, you believe in this, you live this life, your soul will be cleansed, and you'll spend the rest of eternity after you die in paradise. Okay? This promise of eternal life in paradise, it just intrigued them. And the thing is, the Christians they don't say at all, you have to be wealthy. You have to be rich. You have to be from this group of society, or even male or female. They don't even mention that. It just says, if you follow these rules, if you follow this religion, um, you will go to heaven when you pass away for all eternity. That's very, very, very nice to a lot of people. They want to hear that kind of stuff, you know. So in the fourth century, Emperor Constantine, he becomes a Christian, right? He's almost dead. He's dying. He's baptized. And the thing is, this is where a lot of Christian people really like Constantine, is because of this, because he's the one who kind of starts the Roman emperors, the Roman Caesars, to accept Christianity. In 313 AD, the Edict of Milan is issued, which proclaims that Christianity is going to be tolerated. They're no longer Christian. They're no longer be persecuted. They're no longer going to be hunted. They're no longer going to be sent to the lions and things like that just because they're Christians. That's over. And this one emperor, I know I'm going to kill his name, Emperor Theodosius. I don't know. He basically adopted Christianity as the official religion of Rome. That's huge. That is monstrously huge, because 200, 300 years before, Christians were seen as a problem. They were seen as, oh gosh, these guys are trying to cause problem. They're trying to go against the emperor. They need to be dealt with. They need to be hung. They need to be crucified. They need to be spit to the lions. And now they are accepted, and basically they're telling the world this is the official religion of Rome. Massive. All right, so I forgot to put an exit ticket. I've just looked at it right now. I was like, oh, that's right, I forgot to put an exit ticket. So once you finish that last question, you're done for the class. Um, Hopefully you learned something new. Hopefully you enjoyed this. Okay. Next class, we're going to finish off Rome, basically how it ended and things like that. Okay. So you guys, you take care, you be safe, and I'll see you guys later. All right.